Hey there, my friends. It's Bill McDonald, the reading and writing doctor here. And today you're going to notice, if you look at me carefully, that I'm wearing some red glasses. Both lenses are red. And I want to share in this video what I feel is one of my pet peeves. And the word pet is going to be an acronym about what my peeve is, what the thing that frustrates me is. The red lenses stand for every single star test has a question, and until this current year, they had an answer. Okay. And if you've been watching me for any length of time, you've heard me tell you that out of the 10 lowest performing tests the last 2 years, 7 of them were in third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th grade math. Sorry, ninth grade math. 7 out of the 10 lowest performing tests had a question and an answer that did in the 50% correct or lower. And if you ask me why, I'm going to tell you that now questions are not just numbers. They're not just words or a sentence with the question and a sentence with the answer. They're paragraphs with several steps. And so that means your students are having to answer questions that are multi-level in terms of the format and the structure. And it's even worse on the grid responses where the answers are open-ended. And so my pet peeve for reading and writing is that if your timeline requires you to test every week on what I call the roof of the house before you test the floor and the foundation, you're not really teaching, you're just testing. So let me show you this house that I found at the Dollar Tree. And I want you to notice that there's words written all the way around the sides and even on top of the roof. And I even have some things on the foundation, what we're going to call the floor of the house. And so I just finished doing a training with 150 teachers for Cleveland ISD. We worked from third through 10th grade. We didn't get to work with second, first, kinder, and pre-K. And so one of the cons of that is that the floor level is not going to be covered sufficiently if I don't get to work with your second, first, kinder, and pre-K students so that they can know how to give an adequate foundation, the floor to the house, where students from third through 10th grade have to go all the way to the roof level. So let me tell you my pet peeve. If your students are being asked every week to read an entire passage or passages or selections, P will focus on passage or passages, and part of that weekly test in your timeline is their response has to be an entire essay that's an introduction, body, and a conclusion, keyword and, on informative expository, where they're explaining, or opinion argumentative, where they're making a claim somewhere in the essay, normally in the introduction, and then in the body, you combine your evidence and your explanation. And then in your conclusion, you uh, close the essay, you improve the conventions and the content. And if you're 8 through 10th grade, then you have to identify what's known as the counterclaim and refute it. Okay. So if your timeline has you testing every single week on entire passages that require your students, passages, or even a passage that requires your students to write an entire essay, this is what's going to happen. It will be like flipping this house upside down and trying to make it balance on its roof. So I'll go ahead and set this on the table so that you can see, here it is here. Here's me trying to work with a timeline that makes me test every week at the passage and essay level. Let's see how well this balances. Oh, strike one, strike two, strike three. And I want to tell you, because many of you don't know this, but every single year that 4th, 7th, 9th, and 10th grade tested in writing, only 1% of the 4th graders in Texas were able to respond to a topic with an idea that allowed them to get 2 4s from the reader. That's 1 out of every 100. So the programs, the curriculums, the techniques that were being used based on the data alone, you can tell that wasn't working. In secondary, middle school, 7th grade, only about 2% of the kids were getting 2 4s. That means 1 out of every 50. And in high school, 9th and 10th grade, when you were trying to get 4s, only 4%. And that was every single year. It was approximately the same. And it's because too many districts or campuses have a timeline based on writing an entire essay. This is what happened. They would write an entire essay in response to a prompt about their own experiences. Well, since kids have limited experiences, that's going to be a problem in the first place. But now they're going to have to write an entire essay about some passage that they have no experience with. And if the passage is not relevant, if they can't relate to it, or if it's so rigorous, it's above their ability to comprehend, you're going to have to come down off that roof and say, you know what? Let me give a question about a paragraph before I try to give one about an entire essay. Let me give at least one about only one section of the passage or selection. Better yet, give a question that only requires your students to give an answer to that question and the evidence based on one word or one phrase, sentence, or a couple of sentences. At the most, one paragraph. And a lot of you are spending a disproportionate amount of time when you work on the new test items. It says that up to 75% of the questions are still going to be regular multiple choice where you have A, B, C, or D. only about 25% are going to be constructed response type questions in all of the subject areas. And of the regular short constructed and multiple choice, they're all going to be worth either 1 point or 2 points. And I'll share with you that the short answer, where it's the evidence and the answer required in order to get, if you have the answer and the evidence about that, you're going to get 2 points. If you have the answer or the evidence or the answer to that topic, that question in the reading portion, then you'll be able to do okay. But a lot of your students are being asked short answer questions about entire passages, selections, and sections, and even paragraphs before they're being asked simple questions. So let me show you the floor of my house, and we'll start at number 1. Okay. So I will share with you before I show you this that all of the schools that I work with, I want to just give you 3 examples. In Plano, there was this one school who had me come and work with them and show them how to do the process of writing, to teach the entire process in terms of the brainstorming and the planning to a topic, all the way through the introduction, the body, the conclusion, the conventions, the content, and they were writing for quality. So in the same time, the rest of their district was writing an entire essay every single week called assigning writing and testing writing, not actually teaching it. They got 75% twos, ones, and zeros like the rest of the state. But that school that I worked with, they got 60 to 75% threes and fours because they started at the floor, at the foundation, and then worked their way up. Let's do one essay the first 6 weeks. Let's do 5 weeks for the next essay, then 4 weeks for the next one. And that allows you time as a teacher to be an actual doctor, to give mentoring, to reteach, review, rewind, and work with groups and partners to build on the quality of the organization, development, and conventions. So let's look at this floor. Number 1 says PKL. It does not stand for pre-K level, but a lot of your students are on the pre-K level when it comes to penmanship, keyboarding, and letters. And you're trying to give them questions about entire passages and essays. Level 2, spelling. Everybody should be giving spelling / vocabulary / voice / teaching, transitions, and text structures, moving from one idea to the next. But it all starts at the spelling level. Your ability to see and say and spell words, but now on a keyboard. Level 3 on the floor is capitalization, where I can't write an entire sentence. So if I'm doing editing or revising, I'm going to ask you a question about one mistake in a sentence that has a phrase where one word in the phrase is capitalized and it shouldn't be, or it's not capitalized and it should be. Level 4 is punctuation, where you ask a question about a sentence that has a punctuation problem. So, if you're starting with that foundation, all the way down to kinder and pre-K, then when you start trying to make your way up the house to the roof, you're going to be a lot more successful. So before I show you just my level one, I want to show you, I analyzed the test from 2022, and all I put on these 14 pages was every single question that got in the 50s or lower. The answer has an asterisk. The biggest distractor or distractor was there. And there were 14 pages full of questions where, if you look at me in the corner there, your students weren't being asked to respond with an entire sentence. They had to pick a letter. The answers were already there for them. And so if there's 14 pages of questions from 3rd through 10th grade where the students can't even answer a question that's sometimes written in the form of a phrase, sometimes a sentence, how in the world are you going to expect them to write an entire essay or a short answer response to something that's open-ended where they can't even do well on simple, here's a question, here's the answer, the answers are already there. And so if you're watching this, I can send you a copy of this because I went ahead and put them by grade level. And to me, 14 pages full of questions where kids have gaps is a lot. And so I use these, I don't know if you can see the numbers that I put on a lot of them. I basically, for my Texas training tour, my questions that I'm asking and modeling with the teachers at those trainings, at campus and district trainings, are a lot of them based on the keyword strands in the questions or the answers that we're throwing your students off. So let me show you using my editing passages and words, sorry, editing passages and essays. If you're doing PE with passages, you should understand that it should always come before essays. Ask questions in editing because all of you are going to get in elementary, you're going to get about 8 questions, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade on editing with what's commonly known as cups with 1 S for some of you, but for the ones who follow me, know that the other S that you're not practicing enough is S with sentence boundary issues. So let's see if we can not give weekly tests on TEKS that are having students required to answer questions about an entire passage or to write an entire essay. Let's have them make sure they know how to answer questions. Level 1, PKL, super simple strategies for penmanship, keyboarding, and letters. And I'll show you a little bit of that today. Level 2 of cups, when your kids are at the word level, you're going to be teaching them how to take a picture of the word with their eyes to see it. Level 2, to say it. open their mouth, pronounce the syllables. They're going to hear and listen. Which letters are silent? Which letters make sounds? How many syllables am I hearing? Can I snap my fingers and hear the syllables? That way I can think in my brain what skill, what strategy, what specific spelling pattern does this word have? And if I just can't get it into my brain, then I'll go to the book called the dictionary to navigate it and figure out the correct spelling of that word and be able to write right. And spelling should take place all year. Why are there also two number twos on the side is because at the same time you're working on spelling, you need to be building your vocabulary because a lot of supporting standards, 25 to 45% of the questions are going to be supporting standards, vocabulary from social studies and science and other subjects where you have to become interdependent because if I don't even know what the word means, how am I going to know what it means in the sentence or in the paragraph? You're also going to have to work on transition words and phrases. How do you move from one sentence to the next sentence, from one section to the next section? Well, you're going to have to start adding transition words and phrases. So when you come to my Texas training tours in my remaining cities of Dallas, the Mathis Corpus area, Lubbock, Houston, El Paso, Laredo, then you're going to be able to learn how to go from the floor to the roof correctly and have success. A second success story I want to share is one of my favorite teacher friends is now an assistant principal in the Rio Grande Valley. And every single school that she went to teach at or to administer, she made me come. Well, she allowed me to come and work with her students in third, fourth, and fifth grade on writing and math, because I'm also a math consultant. And these past couple of years, I've been working with them on reading and writing and math. And they were always at the top of their district because we were allowed to keep building on a foundation. And I used to give $50 gift cards for all the students that I worked with that would get fours in Texas. I just didn't get to work with the teacher where they only heard theory or philosophy, but I worked with the students while the teachers observed. Every single student in Texas that I worked with would get a $50 gift card for getting a 4 on the real test. And almost every single year, my friend Carmina would get the highest percentage of 4s. She would have anywhere between 10 to 15 4s. And if you do the percentages, you have 100 kids, that's 10 to 15% 4s, where the rest of the state was getting 1% 4s. So she also focused on quality of writing, not quantity. She understood that writing is a process that takes time, not a product that's tested every single week, an entire essay or an entire passage or a selection. Okay. So if you teach in a scaffolded way, your third level would be capitalization. being able to put a group of words together to figure out where the proper nouns are. Level 4, to write a sentence that knows when to stop with a period, exclamation, or question mark, to know when to slow down with a comma. That's a little table here. So commas, colons, semicolons, apostrophes, and contractions, when to slow down with those kind of sentences. And that way you can write an entire sentence that starts with a capital, has subject verb agreement called usage, and ends with a punctuation. Where's number 5? Sentence boundaries. Once you teach them the sentence, they have to be able to identify, do I have any run-ons in this sentence? And do I have any fragments? And for those of you that are not aware, that's going to be part of every single grade level. That'll be at least 1 or 2 of your questions regarding sentence boundaries, either run-ons or fragments, or if they ask you about 2 sentences, they say, what is the correct way to write sentence 4 and 5? It means that sentence 4 is going to be a complete sentence, and that sentence 5 would be a fragment. Or if you flip that, that sentence 4 would be the sentence, and sentence 5 would be the fragment, or it would be sentence and fragment, or fragment and sentence. Level 6, when your students can read and function at the paragraph level, that's when they can learn subject verb agreement, because they have to be able to understand that the subject, we'll call it the head, the brain, has to agree with the predicate, the action, the verb. Is the subject singular or is it plural? Is it simple or is it compound? Is the predicate in past tense, present tense, or in future tense? And even though in editing, they're only going to get 1 question about 1 word that needs to be changed, they might have to go to the previous sentence to find out if it's singular or plural in terms of the subject, what pronoun is supposed to be used based on what noun was being used in the previous one. So that was quite a bit to share, but I want to show you something that is what we'll call level 1 is right here. Not sure why that's there. All right. So page 1 of my scaffolded reading and writing handouts for my Texas teacher training is called Super Simple Strategies and Skills for Penmanship, Keyboarding, Letters, and Rewarding Superstar Students using S Monkeys, the letter S, and Superheroes. So when I come to you at your training, you're going to get about probably 18 to 24 monkeys of 6 different colors. The colors that you see there in front of you: yellow, green, purple, red, blue, orange. And what I want to share with you is on this level 1 is, if you don't work on penmanship, keyboarding, and letters with your students, when the reader looks at those short answer questions, even though the conventions is a not supposed to count against your students for the grade, and all they're supposed to be looking at is the answer to the question, the topic, the prompt that they're being asked about, the skill. If their answer is I illegible, I indecipherable, or I incoherent, then that short answer response is going to most likely get a 0 from the first reader and a 0 from the second reader. The answer and the evidence might be there. It might be a good answer. It might be correct evidence, but if they can't even use the prompt words or the words in the question to transcribe and move them over to the portion on their box that allows them to write a short answer that's decipherable, that's legible and coherent, then your students are going to get 2 zeros. And that same thing applies to essays. I have to write an entire introduction, body, and conclusion. That's the roof. So if your students do not understand that I have to make sure my floor level is sound in terms of capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling, sentence boundaries, and this PKL, penmanship, keyboarding, letters, so that I don't have people looking at my response, because humans are going to be grading the short answer. They'll be grading, two different people will be grading the extended essays in both informative, expository, and opinion argumentative, whichever your students end up getting. And so I would highly suggest that if you haven't already signed up for one of my remaining trainings, message me for the link. Dallas would be on the 14th, not this Saturday, but next Saturday. Then we're going to be in the Mathis area, Mathis, Corpus. So if you're anywhere within 100 miles from there, then I'll be able to help you. And then from there, we have El Paso and Lubbock and where else? Houston, Laredo. So this is the first year that I've taken the time to offer those trainings. And if you really want to learn how to scaffold your teaching, how to have a plan or a uh, what one of my friends said, an action plan for this second semester, then I highly recommend that you attend one of those sessions or have me come to your campus and district and work with you so that we can make sure that there's a timeline that's logical, that it makes sense, that it's sequential in terms of the scaffolding. Now, the last story I want to share with you is there was one teacher, and I've had this, dozens of teachers have told me that they'll say, well, Bill, I've never been able to come to one of your trainings in person. I've not got to watch any of your webinars or your online recorded trainings, but I just watch your free videos. Well, I've had several people that will tell me, even though I've never met you, I got your materials, I purchased your materials, and I follow your free videos, and my scores went up, and I would hear from anywhere from 30 to 40 to 50% based on the things that they would see me model and guide. And so one of the best compliments that I got from one of the leaders at my 150 teacher training the other day was that some of the programs teach a process, but it's a one size fits all process where they expect everybody to be functioning at the passage and essay level. So they think that there's nothing wrong with assigning questions, giving test questions about entire passages and entire essays. Well, I just finished telling you when you do that in math, the last 2 years, you get the 7 lowest scores. All of the years in writing where they were trying to write products, they were testing writing instead of teaching it and assigning it. They weren't teaching the process. You're going to get 75% zeros, ones, and twos. And I'm going to predict, unless you change, modify, or tweak your timeline so that it's scaffolded correctly, we're going to have the same results. Because if the students did 14 pages of poor scores based on simple multiple choice questions where the answers are sitting right there in front of them, then that, my friends, is my pet peeve. Do not have a timeline that has a weekly test on entire passages and essays if you haven't even modeled and mentored how to write at the level on a keyboard, penmanship, letters, words for spelling, vocabulary transitions, phrases for capitalization, a sentence that starts with a capital letter, has subject verb agreement called usage, and ends with a punctuation, paragraph level, run-ons and fragments. All of that is so important. Test the floor and the foundation and teach that, model that, make sure that's on your timeline before you're trying to do entire passages. And people will ask me, well, what about the genres? Well, because kids can relate to real life events, or at least realistic, then I would suggest practice some of these concepts with fiction, with stories. Then you can work to plays because they just have lines and stanzas. Sorry, poems. Then you can work on plays because they have scenes and it's just dialogue going back and forth between characters, um, sandwiched in between what we call stage directions. And then you can do genres that are informative, expository, argumentative, correspondence, if you're going to throw that at your kids, persuasive. Work on your genres that are simple and relatable to your students, and then slowly build up. And again, always think of the scaffolding that I shared, regardless of what type of genre that you're discussing. So once again, my suggestion is fiction, stories, then poems, poetry, drama, plays, literary nonfiction, informative. Then you can start getting into the persuasive, argumentative, uh, correspondence, and any other types of purposes that you think would be convenient. So I love you guys. Happy New Year. Um, Remember, my pet peeve is do not have testing of entire P passages and E essays before you've had teaching of the floor. Get off the roof and spend some time on the floor and the walls. God bless. Go ahead and click like on my YouTube video to subscribe so that you can get some notifications when I have updates. click like on the Facebook video if you're watching it there. Share or tag your writing teacher friends who might consider. And if you're from the Dallas area, this is a special request. I'm going to say, Dallas, we have a problem. In my hotel that I was going to use, the person who was my contact told me that the room was previously rented by her boss to another group of people, and all they had left was a room that at the beginning was big enough, but now there are so many people that have signed up for the Dallas training that I don't have room for them. So here's my offer. If you teach in Dallas, anywhere in that vicinity, inside that, we'll call it a 30-mile radius, and you have 5 to 10 teachers that would like to come to that training, then what I'm going to offer is your 5 to 10 teachers can come for free if you're willing to host my training for 50 to 60 people in your cafeteria, in your gym, or in a space large enough for that. Now, if you have 10 to 20 people, and this is what I offered for another district, the Corpus training was moved to Mathis because they had so many teachers they were wanting to sign up. I was like, you know what? It's just a 20-minute drive, 30-minute drive from there. So to save money for the teachers, instead of having to move to $150 like I was going to this semester for those Texas training tour, uh, I am willing, and I've done it for one so far, uh, to help teachers get in at that lower price of $100. But like I said, even if you only have 5 to 10 teachers and you teach somewhere in the Dallas area, talk to your administrator about allowing me to come. And so this kind of allows you to get around the whole vendor, financial purchase orders, things like that. If you only have 5 to 10 teachers, if you have more than 10, then you'll just have to pay $100 for each person like everybody else does. So if you're that Dallas teacher or administrator and you'd like to take advantage of that opportunity, go ahead and message me or email me at the word writing underscore doctor at yahoo.com. Writing. See if I can get that big enough on my pen here. Nope, not there. Let me go ahead and show it to you on my screen here. All my pens now have my email address. So I'll zoom in there a little bit because I want to make sure that you understand what I'm saying. Fix the focus. All right, there it is. So if you don't message me or it doesn't go through because you're not my friend, or you're not in my group possibly, click writing underscore doctor at yahoo.com and you can we can have a discussion for that Dallas training where as long as you allow me to use your facilities, your screen, I have my own document camera that you saw me using today. If I could just use your screen or a TV monitor, I have my own HDMI cables. I'd love to be able to work with you. for free at your campus for up to 10 people and for $100 for anybody after that. Let me know in Messenger or uh, by email if that's something that you'd be interested in. I have a couple of convention centers and other hotels that are wanting to charge an arm and a leg. But what I'm trying to do is help keep the cost down for you teachers who many of you are telling me are paying out of your own pockets instead of using purchase orders. So just a couple of things to think about. God bless. Remember my pet peeve. Do not test on entire passages, questions about entire passages, or writing entire essays, the roof, before you've built the walls, before you've built the floor, the foundation. Thanks and God bless.